If you're looking at the SwitchBot Presence Sensor and wondering whether it's worth it over the Aqara FP300, then it really depends on how you use motion sensors in your home. I've been testing both of these for the past 2 weeks, and today I'm comparing them in 6 different categories to see which ones actually make sense for your setup. So for the SwitchBot Presence Sensor, it comes with the sensor, a stand with a magnetic base, comes with 2 AAA batteries, and an adhesive sticky pad. And for the Aqara FP300, it comes with the sensor and the stand with a magnetic base. It also comes with a sticky pad and 2 CR2450 batteries. But one thing I found out is that there are actually 2 different versions of the FP300. The one I bought, which is the PS S04E model, that one just has the sticky pad and nothing else. And then there's the PS S04D model, which has the sticky pad. It also comes with a drywall anchor, a screw, and a magnetic plate. I wish that there would just be one version that I could buy instead of 2. It's not a big deal. Thankfully, you can buy those parts at a local hardware store for cheap, but I wish Aqara would be a little clearer on which one you're actually buying. One thing to note is that the SwitchBot Presence Sensor doesn't include any mounting gear. Like there's no screw or metal plate or anything like that. It just has the sticky pad. That's kind of a bummer because basically you get one chance to install this with the pad and then hope that you made the right decision. Otherwise, when you try to take the sensor down from the wall, if you're not careful with getting the sticky pad off correctly, you could accidentally rip your paint off or, damage your wall, and so you're going to want to keep that in mind. And so when it comes to parts in the box, the FP300 is definitely the winner in this category because it includes more things that help you physically install it. And it's also way smaller. But when it comes to the specs, there's a lot of similarities between these two. Both of these have a 120-degree field of view, which is how wide the sensor can see from the main sensor's installation point. They both have infrared and mmWave sensors on board, and they both have a light sensor and don't have zones. The FP300 has a few more sensors on board, like for temperature and humidity, but the SwitchBot technically has a longer range when it comes to infrared detection. It can detect up to 8 meters or around 26 feet using infrared and about 5 meters or around 16 feet or so with mmWave. The FP300 has 6 meters, which is about 19 feet or so. That 1 meter difference of mmWave range likely won't matter too much between these two, unless you have a really specific use case for it. So just keep in mind that these are generally targeted to smaller rooms like bathrooms or bedrooms. Technically, both of them support Matter, but you need the hub. So for the SwitchBot, you need the SwitchBot hub to use Matter, and then for the FP300, you'll either need their hub or a compatible Thread border router. But the biggest difference between these two when it comes to connectivity is that the FP300 has Thread and Zigbee support, while the SwitchBot Presence Sensor only has Bluetooth. This makes a huge difference when it comes to connectivity, especially with Home Assistant. With Bluetooth, you always have to be in range, but with Zigbee, you can have your device be part of a mesh. Now, the Bluetooth range problems can be mitigated by having a Bluetooth proxy network set up. I've shown how to do that in the past. I'll link to it in the description if you want to check it out. But in terms of what it's capable of, Zigbee is just way more powerful as a protocol than Bluetooth is. And so the FP300 wins in this category also. So how easy are these things to set up though? And so for either of these, I recommend getting them set up in the app first before you physically install them. That way it's easier to press the little reset button on top to connect it instead of having to reach up above the dresser and try to press it that way after you've already put it on the wall. So make sure that you connect these first before you physically install them. So both of these require the vendor app to get started. Connecting my phone to the SwitchBot Presence Sensor is actually really easy. It's similar to setting up the Curtain 3s or some of the other SwitchBot products. You just open the SwitchBot app and you search for this device using Bluetooth, and then you go through a few setup steps. It's a similar start for the FP300, but early on, it will ask if you want to use the Thread firmware or the Zigbee firmware. It only supports one at a time. It doesn't support both, and so you'll have to pick one or the other, and so I'm going to pick Zigbee for this. That way it works with my other Zigbee devices. But one weird thing I ran into with the Aqara app is that when I was installing the Zigbee firmware, it got all the way to the end and then basically quit and said, oh, we can't install the Zigbee firmware. But what it actually meant was that the installation was done. Because when I went to my Zigbee controller and started the pairing process, it paired with my Zigbee network and was able to connect to Zigbee to MQTT, and I could see everything inside Home Assistant. So I think the Aqara app just has a bug in it. No surprise. But just keep that in mind if you're installing the Zigbee firmware, is that if you get an error like this, it might just mean that it's ready to be paired, so just give it a try and see if that fixes it for you. So when it comes to physical installation, since both of these are mmWave, we got to make sure that we put it in the right place at the right angle. mmWave sensors are susceptible to interference. And so we got to make sure that we don't point these at something that could interfere with our detection and give us a false positive. Things like ceiling fans or radiators or PC fans or something that moves all the time might trigger these sensors unnecessarily. So wherever you put it, you're going to want to make sure to angle it appropriately so that it's not pointing at the mirrors or the other interference sources. Now, technically, there's this AI. It's hard to tell whether that's actually marketing hype or not. They claim that it will filter out possible interference sources, and so it doesn't hurt anything to turn this feature on in either of these apps, but it won't solve for bad initial placement of these sensors. Aqara has released a kind of like a troubleshooting guide if you run into false positives. I'll link to it in the description. So no matter what AI features are in the app or anything like that, installing these in a good spot up front solve way more issues than any app feature ever could. So I'd recommend putting these sensors at about 6 to 8 feet or so off the ground for best results. If you have it too low, it might trigger based on a pet or something like that, so just keep that in mind. And so ultimately, I think the SwitchBot Presence Sensor actually wins this category. It was easy to get set up through the SwitchBot app. The app had pictures on how you could actually physically install it, or a video if you preferred that method instead. And since the SwitchBot Presence Sensor is only Bluetooth, it doesn't have any potential for firmware switching errors in the app like the Aqara FP300 did. Now, when it comes to the amount of configuration options available, this one's no contest. The FP300 is the clear winner. There's just an insane amount of things that you can configure with the FP300 compared to the SwitchBot. For example, with Zigbee to MQTT, you can basically change any setting on the sensor. You can toggle how sensitive it detects things. You can enable their AI features. You can configure the absence delays. You can configure reporting thresholds, or you can even turn off some of the sensors if you wanted to improve your battery life. We'll get to battery life here in a minute. And even though neither of these have zones, both of these sensors have a way to lower the detection range that it'll recognize movement on. So if you needed to, you can shrink or increase up to a maximum limit what area of the sensor's view it'll trigger as motion being detected. Again, being configurable through Zigbee directly instead of having to open up another app really gives the FP300 a big advantage here. mmWave can actually go through the wall if you're not careful. So once you get this physically set up somewhere, you're going to want to go into the settings for either of these and make sure that you lower the range of what it should be detecting. That way you don't get any false positives. SwitchBot only has like 2 or 3 things that you can configure on the sensor. Technically, the timer for this one can get a little lower than the FP300. You can make this trigger off after 5 seconds instead of 10 seconds like on the FP300. But that doesn't account for all of the other things the FP300 has available to configure. And those sensors can all be configured in Home Assistant, while the SwitchBot, you can only do it through the app currently. The SwitchBot integration in Home Assistant doesn't let you configure anything. And so when it comes to configuration options, the FP300 is the clear winner here. But you know what? How do these actually perform? I put them up there on the fridge, and that points into the main dining room and living room area. So moving in and out of frame here, you can see that the SwitchBot Presence Sensor picks me up almost immediately and then clears the presence detected after about 5 seconds or so. The FP300 acts similarly. It detects me when I walk in and clears the detection once I walk out after the 10-second delay. So when it comes to battery usage, both of these used around 4% battery over 2 weeks, which is a little high compared to the advertised battery usage based on the Aqara and the SwitchBot website. Some of this might be because I was using it more frequently when I was testing it, but something to keep in mind that the battery life may not be exactly as advertised. We'll just have to wait and see how it pans out. You can also turn off the sensors on the FP300 if you wanted to try to extend that battery life a little bit more. Unfortunately, the light sensor on the SwitchBot is always on, kind of whether you like it or not. And so when it comes to performance, I'm giving both of these a tie. And finally, the price. The SwitchBot Presence Sensor is $29 US MSRP, and the Aqara FP300 is $49 MSRP US. For both of these by themselves, I think it's a fair price. This one's cheaper because there's fewer sensors. This one's more expensive because there's more sensors and Zigbee and Matter support. But I think in terms of value, the FP300 is the clear winner on this one. It has a higher value proposition than some of the other sensors. It's only $20 more than the SwitchBot, but you get way more configuration settings. You get full local control with Zigbee. There's temperature and humidity, and light sensor and has mmWave and infrared. The sensor is just the better buy for most people when it's in stock, of course. So I recommend the FP300 to most people who are looking for a wireless mmWave motion sensor. Now, if you're looking for something cheap or you're in the SwitchBot ecosystem already, then you can, of course, go for the SwitchBot. Just keep in mind that it's a little bigger, it doesn't come with an insulation screw, and it still requires Bluetooth, and that it needs a hub for Matter support, and you won't be able to configure it in Home Assistant directly. And if you're fine with those, then by all means, go ahead and buy the SwitchBot. But I think most people should buy the FP300 because it offers a better value. Now, neither of these have zones with them, and so that means it's limited depending on your use case. And if you're looking for a sensor with zones, you're going to want to check out the Aqara FP2 and the Everything Presence Lite over here, and I'll see you in the next one.